Hello, and welcome to episode 66 of the Nourish and Strengthen podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about something that I kind of talk negatively about sometimes. But I'm here to clear the air with my feelings about cardio with this episode called A Case for Cardio. This is actually an episode, an outline that I planned for one of our client calls a couple months back, and I wanted to bring it to you guys as well. So, everything I say here today, guys, I'm going to be speaking more in generalities. So if you are listening to this and you happen to be one of our Moxie clients and you want to try out something that I'm going to talk about, I want to encourage you to go to your coach, and your coach can help you decide if that's the right move, why it is, why it isn't, that kind of thing, and just kind of talk you through that. But I want to just give you an overview on the health benefits of cardio, why we don't rely on cardio for fat loss, because we don't. Okay, I'm going to go into that. We're going to talk about the pros and the cons of different styles of cardio and cardio modalities. And we're also going to talk at the end about if cardio can hinder fat loss. Yes, I said hinder fat loss, not help fat loss. So let's go ahead and kick it off with talking about the benefits of cardio. On social media and on this podcast before, I have talked about reasons why I don't like a lot of cardio, especially for women with hormone issues, women in perimenopause, postmenopause, because as we get older, it can be harder for our bodies to handle the stress that we used to be able to handle just fine when we were in our 20s and 30s, okay? But there are so many benefits to doing an appropriate amount of cardio as well. So let's touch on that first, okay, before we get into all the nitty-gritty details. But heart health. Can we talk about heart health, you guys? Doing cardio regularly can help actually strengthen the heart muscle, which allows it to pump the blood more efficiently throughout our body, which gives us so many benefits, right? It's going to help lower our resting heart rate, lower our blood pressure, which are both going to reduce the overall strain on our heart, which obviously is good for us in the long run, right? It's going to enhance our circulation, like I mentioned, which is going to ensure that all of our organs and the muscles and the tissues in our body are getting adequate oxygen and nutrients, okay? It's also going to reduce, the risk of heart-related diseases such as coronary artery disease, heart attacks, stroke. It's going to improve your endurance and stamina in your cardio, but also just for daily activities and getting through life, right? Like, how many people have you heard of, or maybe this is you, where you're like, I can actually go up a flight of stairs now, and I used to get winded and now I don't. These are the life-changing things that come from cardio and resistance training as well, but cardio in particular is what we're talking about today, right? It can also help your respiratory and mental health too. It's going to improve the efficiency of your respiratory system. It'll actually increase your lung capacity and your oxygen uptake. It's going to make breathing easier and more effective. It's going to release endorphins, right? Like a natural mood boost and stress reducer. I want to actually chime in here and say, the endorphins that come from cardio can help lower our mental stress, but it is still a stress on the body. We're going to talk about this a little bit more in a minute when we talk about different kinds of cardio, but it is a great mental stress reliever, but it's still a stress on the body, okay? I just want to kind of get that out there. It can also help with, the release of serotonin and dopamine, which is going to help fight depression, anxiety, and just help you feel so much better. It's going to help your immune system and the longevity in your lifespan. That good circulation when you're, how I mentioned, strengthening your heart to get nutrients all throughout your body, that's going to help boost your immune system, okay? And so it's going to reduce your risk of getting like colds and flus. It's going to help you recover faster from bugs and injuries and illnesses and things like that. And it can also help reduce the risk of just different chronic diseases that can affect your lifespan and longevity. So with all that said, so many benefits, right? So many. But is it the best tool for fat loss? What do you guys think? The answer is no. And here's a couple reasons why. We're going to go into more details on these reasons at the end. But your body is going to adapt over time, and it's going to burn fewer calories doing the same thing as it did before. So for example, let's take an example here of someone who decided they wanted to run a 5K. Okay. In the beginning, or let's say even longer. Let's say run a half marathon. In the beginning of their training, it's harder for their body to run, right? So let's say you run 1 mile and it's hard for you because you haven't been running, right? months into your training, running 1 mile is going to feel easy because your body has adapted. So you're actually burning fewer calories doing the same thing that you did months before, but it's easier for your body, so you're burning fewer calories. That's one reason why we don't want to rely on it for fat loss, okay? Another reason, it greatly affects our hunger hormones. Have you guys done a lot of cardio or been super active one day, or maybe, gone on a long hike or something, and you are ravenous? More often than not, you are hungrier than the calories you burned during the exercise, if that makes sense. So maybe you went on a really long hike and maybe your body burned 800 calories. It's really easy because of your hunger hormones to overeat more than those 800 calories, if that makes sense. Again, I'm going to touch more on this at the end. Another reason why we don't use cardio as our main tool for weight loss is it requires a lot of time in order to burn a substantial amount of calories. So, with weight loss coming down to calories in, calories out primarily, right? There are things that affect that, of course. But if we were relying solely on cardio for our calorie deficit, you would be spending hours a day in order to burn that much cardio. So that's why we got to rely on our nutrition and our lifting as well. Okay. And a lot of cardio can lead to chronically elevated cortisol levels, which we're going to talk about that in these different cardio modalities. But when your cortisol levels are chronically elevated, it's going to make weight loss much more difficult. So let's go ahead and jump right in to the different cardio modalities that most people talk about. I'm going to break each of these down, what they are, how to do them, and pros and cons. Okay. So let's go ahead and start with our lowest intensity, and that is LISS. Low intensity steady state. That's what LISS stands for. And walking is a great example of this, okay? But typically, LISS is performing activities at a low intensity for a long period of time, typically 30 minutes or more, okay? So examples are walking, maybe like leisurely cycling, light swimming. Your heart rate is typically like under 120, like maybe 90 to 120, maybe 115, something like that, okay? This is really great for a lot of reasons, okay? Our risk of injury is really low because it's very gentle. It's great to do on active recovery days. You could really do it whenever because there's not a lot of taxing on your system, okay? So more pros and cons. Pros are it's very helpful for reducing stress because it is not as much of a stress on our bodies as the higher intensity cardios that we're going to talk about in a minute. So it's really, really good for lowering cortisol levels. That's why a lot of people who, when we're working with clients who are working through hormone issues, we talk a lot about walking because it is so good for lowering stress and cortisol, okay? Super easy to perform. It doesn't require any special equipment, doesn't require any specific fitness level. And there's really not a lot of strain on your central nervous system, so it doesn't require much recovery. The cons there aren't really cons. I had to get really creative here, but if there was one con, I would say it's probably not as effective for boosting your cardiovascular fitness because it's lower intensity. But that's kind of a given. There's truly really no cons to walking, doing lots of activity at a low intensity, okay? Next up, moderate intensity. Okay, and I'm going to touch on zone 2 cardio here because it's kind of a hot topic on social media right now. But moderate intensity steady state specifically, would be like what we were just talking about. It's more of a steady state, a steady effort over time, but it is more intense. Okay, so some examples might be jogging, going out for a 3-mile run or something, cycling at like a moderate pace, maybe an aerobics class, like a Zumba class or a spin class. Things like that would be more of your moderate intensity, okay? So some pros, it does burn more calories in that same amount of time, right? In 30 minutes, you're going to burn more calories than you do in 30 minutes of like walking, okay? So it is going to be better for boosting your stamina and your endurance. It's going to be better for improving your overall fitness levels. Another pro is there's a lot of options. So you can go to classes, things like that. It can help with the social aspect because, maybe you're meeting your friends somewhere, you're doing something as a group. So those would be the main pros, okay? Cons. We do have some cons here. So there is the potential. The biggest con I feel like is the potential to overdo it and cause issues with your cortisol and then downregulated hormones. Okay. There is going to be a higher risk of injury and stress on your joints that impact just that higher intensity. But really, the biggest con I feel like is we see so many women who are doing these kind of classes every single day. It's the overuse. It's the woman who's on the stair mill for 45 to 60 minutes every day, or the person who's going from the spin class to running, to playing tennis for hours a day, to all the different things that people think are so healthy because they're good movement and they're good exercise, but it's the overuse of them that can cause issues. Okay. So some good times to use this kind of cardio would be, maybe if it's programmed by your coach as a way to increase your calorie deficit for weight loss. Maybe you want to improve your fitness level. Okay. Your stamina, your endurance. That would be a great time to use it. Let's talk specifically about zone 2 cardio. Okay. I feel like there's a lot of controversy right now on zone 2 cardio. So what is it? Zone 2 cardio is typically about 60 to 70% of your max heart rate, okay? If you want to get real nitty gritty and find out your anaerobic threshold and know exactly what your zone 2 is, go for it. But for most people, you can figure this out roughly by taking about the number 220, subtract your age. That's going to give you your estimated max heart rate. Then you're going to go 60 to 70% of that. So 0.6 times that max heart rate, and then 0.7 times that max heart rate. That's going to give you that range, okay? So this gets a lot of hate, okay? I don't really know why, besides the fact that it's easy to overuse it. It's easy to, like I was talking about a minute ago, just do way too much of this zone 2 cardio because it isn't as hard on your body as HIIT or higher intensities that we'll talk about in a minute. So it can be kind of easy to feel like you can overdo it and you feel okay. So I think that's probably why it gets a lot of hate, because it's so easily overdone. Okay. So if you want to try this, I am not coming out here saying don't ever do zone 2 cardio, don't ever do moderate intensity cardio, that it's bad for you, that it's going to make you gain weight. You just want to be aware of programming it in moderate amounts and allowing yourself plenty of recovery. Okay. So next up, this is still in our moderate intensity zone, but it is moderate intensity interval training. So MIIT or MIT. Okay. So what this is, it's alternating periods of moderate intensity cardio with lower intensity recovery or rest. So examples might be doing like a run walk or a jog walk. Maybe you run jog for a minute and you walk for a minute or two, right? So it's not the extremes of HIIT that we're going to talk about in a minute. It is just staying in that moderate zone where you can go for a while. It's not like an all-out sprint or like a 9 or 10 out of a 10 scale, but it is just enough to keep it interesting and just pushing a little bit harder and then resting a little bit, pushing a little bit harder, resting a little bit. So some pros, it is less strenuous than true HIIT. Okay. So people with a variety of fitness levels can do this. And my biggest pro, I feel like, is it really prevents boredom. Okay. Because you're varying that intensity throughout the workout. I can't go out for a jog. I get so bored. I get so bored doing the same thing for a long period of time that I have to just, have periods of walking, with jogging, with running, just kind of mixing it up. Okay. Some cons are that it does require more recovery than steady state and lower intensity steady state. Okay. And also another big con here is it's easy to overdo it, which can cause chronically elevated cortisol and downregulation of other hormones over time. Okay. But it can be really great for boosting your fitness level, increasing your endurance if that's your goal. Okay. Let's talk about high intensity interval training. First, let's talk about what it's not. High intensity interval training is not your push-ups, your set of squats, you're running for a minute on the treadmill, then you do some burpees, then you do some crunches, then you rest. That is not true high intensity interval training, okay? What is true HIIT? True HIIT is sprinting, running, or on a bike all out as fast as you possibly can, because there's a bear chasing you and you are going to get eaten by that bear if you can't go a little bit faster, for 15 to 30 seconds or so, followed by a minute or two or even 3 minutes of full on rest. If you can jog during that recovery, you did not run fast enough. Okay. True HIIT is extremely intense and should not be done more for longer than 10 or 20 minutes, maybe 15, 20 minutes, and probably twice a week. Okay. You really want to manage your recovery if you're going to be using this type of exercise. There are pros to it though. It can help boost your metabolism. It can help increase your insulin sensitivity. There are lots of great reasons why you might include HIIT in your training. Okay. It's great for fat loss, for boosting your athletic performance. It can be done, like running and biking are some of the best ways to do this. And so you don't need a lot of fancy equipment. Okay. But there are some cons. It is very taxing on the central nervous system. That's why I said you should not be doing this more than a couple times a week. Okay. It does also require a good kind of base fitness level. Otherwise, you're going to get hurt. All right. Or you have a higher chance of getting hurt, I should say. So it can be great for breaking through plateaus, for boosting your fitness, for focusing on fat loss, but you got to make sure it is programmed smartly. Okay. Now let's talk about, can too much cardio actually hinder your weight loss? Okay. All the types of cardio I just talked about, there are pros and cons. And so the key here is managing those and programming them appropriately. If you are not sure how to program them appropriately for your goals, reach out to me on social media. Tell me what your goals are. Tell me what your typical schedule looks like, and I can help you. Okay. I can help you, as much as I can without actually coaching you. I can try and give you some tips on how to, optimize your routine. Okay. All right. So can cardio actually hinder your weight loss progress? It absolutely can. Okay. When you're doing a lot of cardio, it is important to fuel for that. I'm going to have a little side note caveat here. Oftentimes we get clients that will tell us, I want to run a half marathon or run a full marathon to help me lose weight. Okay. There's so many things wrong with that statement, you guys. There are two competing goals. Okay. If you are going to be doing an endurance event, it is so important that you fuel yourself properly for that. So fueling for endurance and fueling for weight loss are completely opposite. All right. You want to be in a calorie deficit for weight loss. If you were in a calorie deficit while you were doing extreme endurance and a lot of cardio, that I would say daily cardio, but everyone's different. I don't want to say amounts really. Then that is probably going to lead you to some downregulated hormones over time. Okay. So if running a marathon is on your bucket list and you've just always wanted to do it, that is totally fine. I just don't recommend doing it while your goal is weight loss in a calorie deficit. Okay. Doing it at maintenance is a much better strategy, because then you can fuel for your running. You'll feel better and you won't have those downregulated hormonal effects. Okay. All right. Soapbox over. Let's go back to why too much cardio can actually hinder your weight loss. First one, increase your appetite. We talked about all these a little bit ago. I just touched on them. We're going to go into more detail here. Your hunger hormones, your ghrelin and your leptin. A lot of cardio can directly affect your ghrelin and your leptin levels, leading you to have more cravings and feel hungrier, which can lead you to overeat more than the calories you burned in the cardio, okay? Which is going to leave you worse off than had you not done the cardio in the first place, right? That makes sense? Another reason, excessive cardio can cause muscle loss and a slowdown of your metabolism. So specifically, if you don't have adequate nutrition and you're not strength training, it can lead to muscle catabolism, which is, muscle loss essentially. So if you lose muscle mass, your basal metabolic rate is going to go down, which is going to make it harder to lose weight and also harder to maintain that weight loss when you do have it. Okay. Like I've mentioned before, excessive cardio can lead to increased stress and cortisol levels. So when you are doing these classes, daily cardio, daily running, biking classes, all the things, it's going to lead to chronically higher cortisol levels, which is going to lead to more fat storage, particularly around the abdomen. Okay. It can also lead to more health issues like lower immune function, disrupted sleep patterns. There's so many issues that stem from chronically high cortisol levels. Okay. And a lot of cardio can kind of put you in that boat. Another reason, overtraining and injury risk. So if you're doing a lot of cardio, there's much higher risk of getting overuse injuries like stress fractures, joint pain, muscle strains, and that's going to derail your progress even more, right? There's nothing that kind of demotivates you more than getting injured and feeling like you can't exercise, which unfortunately that oftentimes affects people's nutrition choices. So excessive cardio, there are downsides, right? There's also diminishing returns. So after a certain point, that increasing your cardio volume is not going to lead to as many additional benefits as it did in the beginning. Okay. So if you keep on pushing yourself harder and harder with the cardio, you're going to get burned out and you're not going to have the same benefits that you did in the beginning because our body adapts and it's going to make it harder and harder to lose the weight if you're continuing to use cardio as the main tool for that weight loss. Okay. So moderation is key when it comes to cardio. Okay. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm not saying it's going to make you gain weight. I'm not saying anything like that. The key is balancing your cardio with your nutrition, with your strength training, and with your goals. Okay. That's super, super important. And it's a tool. It's a tool that has a lot of benefits, but that also has some downsides, some cons too, just like everything. So the biggest reason that a lot of coaches and myself can sometimes talk negatively about cardio is because it is so often overused, especially by women, especially over 35 or 40, because they think that's what they have to do to burn more calories, to lose the weight. They think that cardio is the way to go, right? I mean, it's quote unquote easier than managing your nutrition sometimes, you know? So let's recap here. So cardio has got some great benefits: improved heart health, better respiratory function, enhanced mood, mental well-being. It helps boost longevity, but relying solely on cardio for fat loss is not the best idea because your body's going to adapt. You may lose muscle. It's going to increase your appetite. And so the most effective approach to cardio is one that combines your cardio with proper nutrition, proper strength training, proper recovery according to your goals. So hopefully that was helpful for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions for me about cardio and how to work it into your routine, like I mentioned before, just hit me up on social media. I'd love to chat with you about your goals, about your routine, and how we can optimize that for better results. All right, guys, that's what I got for you today, and I will talk to you guys next week.